All right, and at 32 minutes past the top of the hour, time for our first conversation this morning. And being Wednesday, you know, you have to talk about lifestyle. And this morning, we're just trying to focus on female hygiene, specifically menstrual hygiene. What exactly goes into that? And also, what has really caused the fear in regards to having this kinds of conversation, especially in this 21st century? That is what is going to be your focus this morning. And on set, I'm joined by the lovely Cindy.
Hello. Good morning, Doreen. Thank you for having me.
Good morning to you too. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I thought, you know, what you just said about, you know, what has caused the taboo, that was really interesting to me, that question, because, I mean, women have been menstruating forever, since Adam and Eve.
Yeah, since the days of Abraham. And, you know, since actually back in the day.
Yeah.
So you'd wonder what really is the issue.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you really think about it, everybody alive is alive because women are menstruating. So it's like, how did this thing become so taboo?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting question. And, you know, I always think, you know, when children are born, they're born a blank slate.
Yeah.
And so what happens between the time they're born and the time a girl is, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, when she starts her period, that leads her to be so ashamed that she won't even tell her mom.
Yeah, and Cindy will be coming to that in a short while as we build up on the conversation. But just to try and create a base, also for our viewers to understand what really has been your drive into just focusing on menstrual hygiene, because right now many people are coming up with just wanting to champion for proper menstrual hygiene for women. Yeah. So I'd want us to begin by first understanding what Vaaji Life is all about. What is the inception behind this kind of organizational company?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vaaji Life is a menstrual hygiene company, and what we do is we provide organic cotton products. And the reason that we went that route was because my personal experience was, so I was born and raised here in Kenya.
Yeah.
And I went to Precious Blood and then graduated from Precious Blood, and I got a Zawadi Africa scholarship.
So the English should not fool you. She's fully Kenyan.
Fully Kenyan, okay? Fully Kenyan. Yeah. But so I finished, and then I went to the States for college. And it was interesting because my high school experience was that every single time after my period, I would always have a rash. And so it became a synonymous thing with my period, to where I just thought, okay, I have my period, I have a rash, and then I get over it, you know, in a few days, and that's just how it goes. But then I moved to the States, and it suddenly stopped. And it took me a few months to even notice that it stopped, because I expected it, right? And so then it stopped, and I was like, oh, this is a little strange. Anyway, so then I came back to visit a few times, and 3 years ago, I specifically had an experience where I used products while I was here, and I had that familiar rash again, and that's when it really hit me, and I said, oh my goodness, this whole time in high school, I always thought it was my body. And I think as women, we have that thing where we're like, no, it's me.
It's not the product. It's just me.
It's me. It's just me. And so then, but that was a moment where I realized, oh my goodness, it's the product. Yeah. That's what was causing my reaction. And, you know, in that moment, I kind of went from this mindset of saying, oh, I'm the problem, to saying, oh, wait, the product is the problem, and my body is doing exactly what it should be doing in alerting me that there's a problem. And so also, you know, when I was in school, in the start of my career, I was in quality assurance. That's, you know, that was my trade. And so based on that experience, I started looking into it more and trying to understand what was causing these, you know, these reactions. And I don't know if you remember, but the same 3 years ago, there was a hashtag My Always Experience. It was a big movement. And women were talking about their experience. And, you know, you were having these women coming out and talking about having burns and having rashes and having itch. And, you know, and so it was now suddenly women opening up and saying, oh, it's not me individually, it's as a collective we're experiencing these things. And so I started looking and seeing, okay, what is causing these things? And as I found out more, I realized that, you know, there are fragrances and dyes and chemicals that, you know, unfortunately have even been banned in some places, but there are in the products that we have, and, you know, that's what was causing these reactions. And so for me, I mean, I've always been a person that really believes in justice and fairness, and so Vaaji really was born out of that and saying something has to be done and an alternative has to be provided where people can choose better, because, you know, as we find out more, as we know what is causing the reactions that we're having, then we can choose better.
All right. So Vaaji was not coming up just in addition to what is already existing in the market, but it was coming up as a solution based. All right. Now, aside from your experience, what exactly also informed your passion and drive for menstrual hygiene? Because the way I was mentioning earlier is that right now we're seeing so many people coming up with just trying to ensure that women can get proper menstrual hygiene. We're also seeing the reusable pads, you know, being created across board. So what else was the other thing that drove you into just trying to ensure women get proper menstrual hygiene products and care?
Yeah, you know, I think that's a great question that you ask. And a lot of the times when we think about our menstrual hygiene, we think about it as, you know, 3 to 5 days when we have our period, right? And, you know, for me, in understanding what the menstrual cycle is and understanding that literally every single day of the month, there is a biological, a chemical process that's happening in your body, and that's leading you to feel and act a certain way, or, you know, all of that. That's the reason I felt so passionate about menstrual hygiene, because it's not just the 3 days. Those 3 days affect the rest of your cycle for the rest of the month. And so you could be going through a whole year experiencing things and not understanding that it's also related to the things that you're using, the things that you're exposing yourself to during those 3 to 5 days, right? And so for me, at least on a personal level, that was a real motivation in understanding that menstrual hygiene goes beyond your period. It goes beyond the 3 to 5 days. And, you know, when you look at Vaaji, you know, I think it's a real representation of everything that we believe in, everything that my team believes in when it comes to, you know, okay, your product has to be quality, right? The way you receive it, it's a beautiful experience. Menstruation is a beautiful experience. It is a source of life. So we want it to be beautiful. And then not only that, we've got an app that will be available in a week. And so the reason that we went that route too was to educate women, to provide easy access to education, because there's things as simple as, you know, 3 days before your period, if you cut out sugars and carbs, then your experience is totally different while you're on your period. But a lot of people don't know that information. And so we wanted to provide that information at your fingertips and to really make menstruation and really the whole month, because the menstrual cycle is literally the whole month. It's not just those 3 days, that's your period. But we wanted to make sure that your cycle is taken care of, your cycle is comfortable and beautiful, and that, you know, it doesn't stop you from doing anything. You leave the house understanding what's going on in your body, and therefore, you know, you leave with power. You leave feeling like you understand, therefore nobody can tell you anything. You can maneuver your day.
You're good enough. You've mentioned something that I really want us to explore just a bit, at least also to get a better understanding, and also for people to appreciate why actually menstrual hygiene is a big deal and why women take it as a big deal. That it's not just a 3 to 4 days or 3 to 5 days kind of event the way we think about it. Maybe you can expound just a bit why it's actually an entire month kind of cycle and not just the 3 to 4 days that you actually get your period. What goes into you making it, say, you saying that it's not a 3 to 5 days, it's actually an entire month kind of process?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we'll get a little technical here, if that's okay.
That's why we are here. We're here to learn and understand why.
So literally the menstrual cycle is divided into 4 parts, right? And so you have the follicular phase, you have the luteal phase, you have your actual menstruation, and you have ovulation. And so all these parts are leading up to your period, right?
All these phases
are leading up to your period, right? And so you go from, you know, let me start from, you know, where your period is. So your period, that's the egg, it's being essentially it's been released, and now a baby has not, you know, come out of it. And so anyway, you have your period that comes out. But right after your period, you're going into an ovulation phase. Ovulation is where that egg is being released, you know, down the follicles, right? And so then the egg is released, and then you go into a phase where now, okay, the egg is waiting. It's like, what's going to happen here, right? What's next? And then it's like, okay, if it's not fertilized, which if it's fertilized, that leads into a pregnancy. But if it's not fertilized, then you're going closer into now the egg realizing that, okay, I can't survive in this environment for too long, so I'm going to need to make my way down and, you know, eventually come out as your period. And so everything is really interconnected, and this is those 4 weeks, like it's usually for most women, because the average cycle is 28 days, and then everything around that, you know, it's still normal, but 28 days is your average cycle. So if you divide that every 7 days, you're going through a part of the process, and that part of the process has its own symptoms. It has its own things that you need to do. So say if your progesterone level is high, then, you know, your skin is more sensitive, and so you need to know that. Right?
That's why we see the breakouts?
Yes, that's why we see the breakouts, and that's why you'll see more sun damage in certain times of the month rather than others.
All right.
So usually, like with our app, what we tell you is, so you track your cycle, and based on your cycle, we give you a personalized insight and tell you on this day, your progesterone level is high. Therefore, you're susceptible to sun damage, and so if you're going to be outside, either make sure you have some good protection, or if you don't have to go outside, stay away from the sun. Right. So it's really giving you very personalized information to ensure that you, by the time you're walking out of the door, walking out of the house, you know exactly what's going on. So it's not hitting you as a shock, or nobody's telling you, oh, you're PMSing. You're saying, oh, I know what's going on in my body, so I'm walking with confidence because, you know, that's who I am. Nobody's telling me who I am. I'm showing up as who I am, you know?
Wow. So it means that actually this is an entire process. And I felt it was important for us to understand why it's not a 3 to 5 days, the way even most of us females will assume it's just a 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 days kind of an event.
Yeah. And
sometimes this is why we don't really appreciate when we say, you know, the menstrual hygiene needs to be prioritized even as a country. So this is actually why.
Yeah,
this is a whole process.
It's so, and I think if you even think about it from the perspective of being the source of life, I think that puts it into context, where you realize if something is the source of life, it can't be coming out of nowhere, you know, where you're suddenly like, oh, I have my period and then it's finished, you know. It doesn't work that way. If it's the source of life, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. There's a lot of, oh, the egg has to be released, and then now it's waiting to be fertilized. After, you know, okay, it's not been fertilized, it has to come out somehow, but it has to travel in order to come out. For it to travel from that area into now coming out as your period, that is a process. And all those things, there's hormonal changes that are happening, there's physical changes that are happening, whether that's, you know, experiences you're having with your back, it's a whole, it's literally the whole month is your menstrual cycle, and the more you know about it, the more powerful you feel.
Yeah. And we are here to learn. That's why we are learning about that.
Yes.
All right. I mean, if this is actually the case, then, I mean, this is really something very important that needs to be talked about constantly, also for people to understand and have better knowledge and insight about it. Then why does, up until now, people are so scared to talk about menstrual cycle or menstrual hygiene? Why is so there period shame? We are living in the 21st century, have technology. What really is the issue?
You know what? I wish I had a singular answer to that. But one of the things that, you know, and I've shared this multiple times, where I always say, there's something that we are doing as a society that's not right, because no child is born feeling ashamed about their period, or they don't even understand what it is. So we're saying something to these children to where by the time they get to 9, 10, 11, you know, when they're having their period, they're afraid. And also for the boys, where by the time they get into that age and they see their friends having their period, they feel like it's something they should make fun of.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing, right? And so something is happening in our society where we're not holding menstruation in the place of honor and respect that we should hold it, because when you think about it being the source of life, I mean, that is a very respectable thing.
That in itself makes it important.
So important, where we're doing a disservice to women who bring life into the world by shaming them for this thing that actually enables them to do it. It's a vessel of life. And so for us to shame women is a really, we're going contrary to what we should be doing. We should be uplifting. We should be respecting and honoring this thing. And so, you know, I don't know if you heard that story a few years ago of the girl that she got up in class and she'd started her period, and, you know, people made fun of her and she ended up committing suicide. It was about 2 years ago.
And actually there have been numerous stories in regards to that, not just only that in itself. Quite a number of them.
But I think we have to start educating our boys on that. You know, because the person that made fun of her was a male teacher, unfortunately, which he should have known better. He's an adult. He should have known better. But why didn't he know better?
Education was lacking.
Education was lacking. And so we have to not only put the girls in a corner and say, hey, this is this thing, we hide it from the boys, but we have to start from a young age. Like, I have a 3-year-old son, and now when he comes into the bathroom and he sees a pad and he asks me, Mommy, what's this? I tell him that's a pad. It's just an age-appropriate conversation to help him understand that this is a part of life for women. And so I'm hoping that by the time he's 13 and he has a friend that has a leak, he's the kid that's running and saying, oh, let me help you, let me go run and get you a pad, because he should.
And now he knows. Doesn't come as a surprise to him.
Yes.
Let's explore that a bit. Bringing this kind of conversation to our males and also making them understand, because the way we're talking about that particular story of that young girl who committed suicide as a result of what the male teacher did to her, and what you're saying is that there's been numerous cases of that. It's just not only one. Some even go untold. And some males will say, I really want to be part of this conversation, I just don't know how.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's a really interesting point that you bring up. And I always ask back, so why don't you know how? Why don't you know how?
I don't understand how this thing works. Make me understand.
Then let's talk about it, because it starts with conversation, right? If you weren't taught as a child, I mean, I have a spouse, people have, different partners, and so talk to your partner, because also as women, we hide it. We hide it because we're saying, oh, I'm on my period. You're grabbing your tampon, you're grabbing your pad, and you're hiding it, and you're going to the bathroom out of a meeting. But when you're hiding it, that's also reinforcing that man saying, I don't know how to have this conversation because I feel like it's something that should be hidden. But really, why are we hiding it? Do you hide when you say, oh, excuse me, I'm going to the bathroom? Do you hide that? No. It's a natural process. You just go, right? And so that also, I mean, it takes the women for us to bring the men into this conversation. It has to be a conscious decision for us to say, yes, we are going to include you because it matters. Because, a lot of these men have daughters, they have wives, they have sisters. And so for them not to be included is also a disservice to them, because then they're not able to be present in the lives of their loved ones as they should be. I have a girlfriend who mentioned to me how, she was sending her boyfriend to go and grab some products for her, and he wouldn't go.
That's again another issue, by the way.
First of all, for me, I'd be like, okay, goodbye. Like, that's it. That finished. Why is this a big deal to you? Because, I mean, if we can be intimate, then why would you not care for such a big part of what allows me to be me?
And what's the big deal in getting menstrual products?
Yes, why are you so ashamed, Why is that a big deal? You should, I mean, to me, you should proudly be walking in and saying, oh, my spouse needs this, so I'm just going to go pick it up and, you take it home to her. So the fact that you feel embarrassed, and it's a much bigger question, because it just starts from childhood. Something that's instilled in childhood is very hard to work around. It's really hard to get people over that hump of things that they're taught when they're children. But I think, sometimes with older generations, it's a little bit more difficult, but we have an opportunity to fix it with the children,
Okay, in regards to that, even as you talk about how we can bring our males into this kind of conversations, because there's a lot that actually really wants to be part of it. And to be very genuine, some don't even really know how exactly to be part of this conversation. So do you feel or think that there's a place of culture in this? Because case in point, the way you're mentioning that perhaps there's a spouse, just from the story that you've given, they don't even know, they can't go to the shop to get a menstrual product for their spouse. So do you think there's a place of culture in this, and what can be done? Because culture is deep-rooted. Culture is deep-rooted, but not all culture is good. Right? When we talk about FGM, we talk about the pros and cons and all that. It comes from somewhere. Just because it's part of our culture doesn't mean that we have to hold on to it if it's not good. There's beautiful things about culture that we should absolutely keep, but there's some things that we need to unlearn because it is harming us. When you have girls who are committing suicide because of this, literally our lives depend on us unlearning this thing. We have to unlearn this whole shame around periods, because our girls' lives depend on it. So I think you do bring up a good point. I also think that we just have to
sometimes look at things and say, okay, how is it serving us? We've done this for years and years and years. We've seen the results. Can we try something different?
Especially if it's not of any benefit.
Yes, because there's that saying that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Exactly.
So if the result that we're getting is girls being so embarrassed that one, they're not telling their moms even when they start their period. I've seen stories of girls who use toilet paper for months and months before they ever tell their mom that they started their period because they feel like they're doing something wrong, right? So if we have girls that are so afraid that they won't even tell their parents, okay? And then you have girls that are committing suicide because they've been embarrassed. Obviously, this thing is damaging girls in our society. So we have to do better for our girls. And the thing is, when we think about society, sometimes we think, oh, every individual, and so this girl is committing suicide here. But how does that affect her community?
Yeah.
How does that affect her family, right? Because the family dynamics will never be the same once she's committed suicide. And what does that mean for the girls that she was in class with, right? It affects everybody. It affects each and every one of us, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our mothers. So we owe it to young girls, especially, to do better.
Wow, you speak about that so passionately. Just brings that whole idea that indeed we really need to do something. So then does it mean that we have a long way to go? Or at least we're making some strides? The fact that we're here having this conversation on Good Morning Kenya, we're making some strides. Because a few years ago, we would never have this conversation. On national TV, on a morning show.
Yes, we would never. So we are making some strides, but we do still have a long way to go too. And we just have to keep chipping at it and keep working intentionally. The reason, again, when we think about the fact that our girls' lives depend on this, we have to do better. We have to put in the work, and everybody has to do their part. But that's not to discredit the fact that we have come a long way, and we just need to continue going.
All right, we definitely appreciate the fact that we at least are making some progress, but also cannot move away from the fact that we still have a long way to go. So in your capacity as Cindy, what are you doing to change the narrative and at least bring the conversation on the table?
Oh, wow. Those are some great questions. In my capacity as Cindy, there's a few things that I am doing. The fact that I'm here talking with you today.
That's one.
That's one of the things. I know that my voice is one of my biggest assets, and so I have made a conscious effort to use it to be there for girls, to create a space that's safe for young girls especially. And then the other thing that I've done is create Vaaji Life, and we've got our website vaajilife.com. If you go and look at that, you see the products that we have. They're safe menstrual hygiene products. We focus on ensuring that we stay away from chemicals, we stay away from dyes, we stay away from just the plastic that's causing a lot of the issues that women are experiencing here with menstrual products. So that's one. But also when you look at Vaaji Life, you see the imagery that we put out. You see, we've been very intentional about how we present everything. And a big part of that has been really in uplifting the pride of women, uplifting the beauty of menstruation, and saying, yes, we menstruate and it's the source of life and we're very proud of it.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing. And so that's a big message that we're sending out, and we're trying to ensure that because period shame is over here, right? It's the extreme. It's like the bad thing. It's on the extreme end, and so we're hitting it with extreme pride in menstruation, extreme pride in being women, extreme pride in being the source of life, and we're hoping that as we hit it, then we can come to a middle ground where now this is a safe thing to talk about. It's a beautiful thing, and our society recognizes how honorable it is.
It is. All right, I wouldn't really want us not to talk about the substandard product, because just the way we are mentioning 3 years ago, there was an ongoing hashtag, and we might perhaps not mention the product per se, but let's talk about this substandard product, because that's not the only one. There are quite a number of them, especially in the market. And that goes back to if I can mention maybe common Kenyans per se. As it is in itself, it's already difficult for a good number of women to even access this product. And even for those that even go the extra mile and get them, some of them are substandard. So what does this mean about what we are doing to perhaps our women and when it comes to the access of this menstrual product?
It's really unfortunate, because I think one of the biggest benefits that just the consumer industry has is a lack of information when it comes to consumers, right? And so you notice even with Vaaji, what we've done is we're very forward with our customers. We say, you go on our website, you're going to see our product information, because we believe in you knowing what you're putting in your body.
Yeah.
We absolutely believe that that is important, and it's our responsibility as the company that you're buying from to tell you what's in your product. And so that lack of knowledge, that gap between the consumer and the person that's manufacturing this product, that tends to cause a problem, because there's a lot of gray area there, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the products that we're consuming, unfortunately, are usually brought in by companies that are not Kenyan. And when they're brought in by companies that are not Kenyan, there's also a certain disconnect when it comes to who's going to use these products. Because when you're utilizing a product, when you're bringing in a product, and you know that your mother, your sister, your wife, your friend is going to use it, you think about it very differently. It's very personal. And so you're trying to ensure that you are bringing in a good quality product that is safe to use, right?
Yeah.
But then when there's this disconnect where multinational corporations are bringing in these products, and maybe a man somewhere in the US is making a decision on the product that's brought to Nairobi, Kenya, what reason does he have to ensure that you, Doreen, you as a woman in Nairobi, Kenya, get the best that they have to offer?
Okay.
Especially when he can still make money on giving you a product that's substandard.
Doesn't have an idea of the market that he's producing the products
No,
for.
he has no connection to you as an individual, and therefore, unfortunately, has no care for you as an individual. And so that's what we're seeing, where we see a lot of substandard products. And like you mentioned, many women have talked about these products.
Yeah.
Many women have experienced them and talked about the side effects that they're having as a result. And so if that disconnect between the person that's making those decisions and you, the end consumer, is a big part of the problem. But then you see it translate in these multiple different brands that are brought in, that there's that care is no longer, it's just not there, because why should they care?
All right.
They don't know you.
Okay, this actually, it's really becoming even more emotional, because we really need to understand more about this kind of substandard products and what even we can do as a society or a community. But just hold that thought right there. We'll be coming back to explore more on that, and also some of the gains perhaps that she's made as a person to ensure that proper menstrual hygiene is given for women. Time for that break. We'll return with more of a lifestyle segment. Welcome back to the program. This is still Good Morning Kenya. If you're just joining us, you're still right in time for our ongoing conversation surrounding matters menstrual hygiene on our lifestyle segment. Still joined by Cindy Arunga, CEO of Vaaji Life, helping us demystify and break down some of these issues that surround female hygiene and altogether menstrual hygiene. Cindy, before we went on break, we were talking about the substandard products. Yeah. And I still want us to stick there a bit, because sometimes you can sit here and talk about how it is important to continue sensitizing, offering information, but we are oblivious of the fact that perhaps someone even went and bought a product, and I want to pick the case in point of someone who even lives below $1. So I can imagine this is someone that is struggling to even make ends meet. They tried the best they could to get a product, and the experience they had with the product was so off, so they went back to using rags or tissues.
Yeah, and what you bring up is so sad. And for me, I've always believed that as a company, it is your responsibility to tell your consumers what's in your product. And the reason for that is very much exactly what you're saying, because people are spending their hard-earned money on your product.
Yeah.
So for them to save up and buy your product and then end up with side effects, no, that's just wrong. That should not be happening. And unfortunately, you see a lot of companies from the West, and they'll bring in a product that perhaps was even banned in the US or banned in EU, and now they want to not make a loss on it, and so they'll bring it here and say, oh, we'll sell it here, and we just want to not make a loss.
Imagine, and this is human life, because this is
human life. It's human life. And the thing is, especially when it comes to menstruation, when you think about the exposures to how sensitive that area is, when a woman has a child, whatever she's been exposed to, she's passing on to that child. It's the same. The birth canal is the same as the whole area that you're exposed to, right? And so that you're exposing when you're menstruating. And so whatever the woman is exposed to is passed on to the next generation. So companies, we have to, I feel that company, and Vaaji stance is that as companies, we have to have a people-centric approach. People come first before profits. And we believe as a company that if you care about people, then profits will follow. Because people know that you care about them, they can trust you, they can trust your product, and they continue to have good experiences with your product, and therefore profits will follow. But you have to start by caring about people.
Wow. Then Cindy, just from what you're talking about, I tend to feel and imagine that when you talk about this female hygiene and altogether menstrual hygiene, it's actually a kind of, it's huge, because I mean when you talk about that, it's just important to start with this conversation. Look at what we're mentioning. There's some missing links.
There are, and there are even links that we can't talk about on air because it gets a lot more complicated, and we can't mention names, but there are links that need to be addressed also in the system to protect women, to protect future generations, because whatever we're exposing our population to today, it's going to show up in the next generation.
And look at that ripple effect, just from what you're explaining to us, passed down to this generation, the next again, passed down to the next one.
You're going to see diseases that we've never experienced before, and we're starting to see a surge of those. We're starting to see infertility rates like we've never experienced before, right? And why is that? We have to think about the things that we expose our bodies to, and in relation to what the input and output, right? Whatever we're putting in, we're going to get out something. Now, is that something that we're going to get out good or bad? That depends on what we're putting in, right? And me, Cindy, can sit here and talk. I can talk all I want, but it's also up to each and every one of us as consumers, first of all, to say what's in your product. Ask the questions. Ask the companies that you're buying from. Ask them. They owe it to you to tell you. But also I can sit here and also try and empower you as an individual, but it's not just me. There's plenty of other girls here in Kenya like me who can use their voice to continue to empower everybody around us. Let's do it together. I can't do it by myself. I have a voice that I can use, and I can use it, but I need you to use your voice too. Ask the hard questions.
It's a collective responsibility.
Yes, because we can do it together. It only changes if we all do it together.
Okay. Now, from what you are establishing is that it's actually not just the menstrual products. I mean, this is like an ongoing cycle where there's a tendency of the West to dispose of products which are not being used there anymore because of issue A or B, and they just come to the African continent, most African countries in the African continent. So what is the place of us as Africans in terms of then making our own products that best suits us as Africans?
That is a fantastic thing you bring up, because again, nobody's going to care about you or your people like you are going to care about you and your people, right? And we have to realize that. We have this, it's what I call a colonial mindset, where we say, oh, if it's from the West, it's good.
It's good enough.
It's good, and we don't question. Actually, those people in the West are very far removed from you. Why would they care? And most of the time you find that whatever they're selling in the West, even though it might be packaged to look similar to here, it's a completely different product. That is not by mistake, that is by design.
So they know what they are doing.
Absolutely, they know, because the women in the States are not complaining about those same products, even though they're sold on their shelves, right? Because that product that is sold there is completely different from what's sold here to you under the same name. Okay, and the minute we realize that, then we'll start to see that we can all create solutions. There are problems in different parts of, when it comes to consumer products. There are these issues, like you mentioned. It's not just menstrual hygiene, but you too can create a solution, because nobody's going to care like you care about yourself, about your sisters, about your brothers. So like you said, there are all these things that need, need some fixing, and we can all create solutions. Step into who you are, step into the problems that you see around you, and see them as opportunities to create solutions. I can do it, and if I can do it, you can do it too, because I know many women like me who can speak, who went to school, who can, who are smart women. So it's not just me. You can do it too. Create solutions around you.
This conversation was just beginning to take a different turn, which I would have loved us to explore, but due to the constraint of time, we have to end it here, Cindy. But thank you so much for your insights. I mean, this has been such an insightful conversation, just trying to understand the dynamics surrounding menstrual hygiene, because you can sit and keep talking about information, but where are our men? How can we bring them into this conversation? We can see to talk about the substandard products, but what can we do as Africans and make our own? Because we also have minds, brains, and hands to do these things.
Yes.
So why not?
There's no monopoly on the smart.
Yeah, no monopoly of knowledge.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cindy, again for your time and for the insights.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a great conversation.
Good enough. So this is where we bring the conversation to a close on our lifestyle segment. But we're not yet done with Good Morning Kenya. Still more ongoing after the break.